The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with tension as Ambassador Zekthal of the Vraxian Empire rose from his crystalline seat. His four arms gestured dramatically, while his compound eyes fixed on a human delegation seated across the vast circular arena. The ambient lighting cast eerie shadows across the faces of representatives from dozens of species, each more alien than the last. Esteemed council members, Zekthal's voice resonated through the universal translators, carrying undertones of barely contained fury. The humans have committed an unprecedented act of aggression against our mining colony on Kepler 442b. They destroyed our extraction facilities and liberated our workforce without provocation. Dr. Sarah Chun, Earth's chief xenobiologist and diplomatic liaison, remained perfectly still in her chair. Her dark eyes never left Zekthal's towering form as she processed his accusations. Around her, the other human representatives shifted uncomfortably, but Sarah's expression remained neutral, almost bored. The Vraxian continued his theatrical display, his voice rising with each word. We demand immediate reparations and the surrender of the terrorist who led this unprovoked assault on sovereign Vraxian territory. The human known as Captain Marcus Webb must face justice before this council. A murmur rippled through the assembly. The Kthari delegates' tentacles writhed anxiously, while the silicon-based Nexari representatives' crystalline form pulsed with agitated light patterns. Even the normally stoic Andromedans shifted in their environmental suits. Sarah finally stood, her movement fluid and controlled. At barely 5.5 feet tall, she appeared dwarfed by the massive alien beings surrounding her. Yet something in her posture commanded attention. The chamber gradually fell silent. "Council members," she began, her voice carrying clearly without amplification. Ambassador Zekthal's account is selective in its details. Perhaps he forgot to mention that his workforce consisted of captured civilians from 3 different worlds, including children barely past their first molting. Zekthal's mandibles clicked angrily. Those were legal acquisitions under Vraxian law. Under whose authority? Sarah interrupted, taking a step forward. The Kepler system falls under no recognized territorial claims. Your colony was operating illegally, using slave labor to strip mine rare Earth elements for your war machine. The Vraxian ambassador's forearms spread wide in what his species considered a threatening display. "You dare lecture us about law, human? Your species has been spacefaring for barely 2 centuries. We have ruled the void for over 10,000 years. Sarah smiled, a cold expression that didn't reach her eyes. And yet here we are. The council chamber erupted in agitated chatter. The hegemony's prime speaker, a massive being whose species resembled a cross between a bear and an octopus, raised one of its 12 appendages for silence. When order returned, its deep voice boomed across the chamber. "The charges are serious, human. The Vraxian Empire has been a council member for millennia. Your species joined us barely 50 years ago. If their claims prove accurate, Earth faces expulsion and economic sanctions." Sarah nodded respectfully. "Prime Speaker, we understand the gravity of these accusations. We're prepared to demonstrate our version of events, but we request the right to trial by combat, as outlined in Section 12 of the Galactic Accords." A shocked silence fell over the chamber. Trial by combat was an ancient right, rarely invoked, and considered barbarically outdated by most civilized species. The human delegation behind Sarah exchanged worried glances. Zekthal's compound eyes gleamed with predatory satisfaction. The human seeks to die gloriously rather than face the shame of surrender. "Very well. I accept this trial by combat on behalf of the Vraxian Empire." "Actually," Sarah said, her voice carrying a hint of amusement, "the trial isn't between representatives. According to the Accords, each side must select a champion to face the Council's trial beast in the arena of judgment. Whichever champion survives longer proves their people's righteousness." The Prime Speaker's massive form shifted, appendages writhing with what might have been excitement or concern. The trial beast has not been awakened in over 3 centuries. Human, are you certain of this path? Sarah's smile widened slightly. Absolutely certain, Prime Speaker. Zekthal's confidence wavered slightly. The trial beast was legendary among spacefaring species, a creature so dangerous that it had killed dozens of warriors from various worlds. Only the bravest or most foolish would willingly face it. I named General Krexvar as the Vraxian champion, Zekthal announced. The greatest warrior our species has ever produced. And I will serve as Earth's champion, Sarah replied calmly. The chamber exploded in shocked exclamations. The other human delegates looked horrified, while alien representatives chittered and buzzed in their various languages. Sarah Chun was known throughout the galaxy as a brilliant scientist and diplomat, not a warrior. Zekthal laughed, the sound like breaking glass. A scientist against the destroyer of worlds? This trial will last mere moments. Sarah's expression never changed. We shall see, Ambassador. We shall see the arena of judgment stretched across 3 kilometers of the Council Station's lower levels, its ancient walls scarred by countless battles fought throughout galactic history. Massive viewing platforms hung, suspended above the arena floor, packed with representatives from every major species in known space. The air thrummed with anticipation and barely contained excitement. Sarah Chun stood at the human preparation chamber, methodically checking her equipment. Her diplomatic robes had been replaced by a simple black combat suit, its surface gleaming with microscopic reactive armor plating. Her team of advisors clustered around her, their faces pale with worry. Dr. Chun, please reconsider this, pleaded Ambassador Torres, Earth's senior diplomatic representative. General Krexvar has killed over 200 opponents in single combat. The Vraxians literally breed him for warfare. Sarah secured her utility belt, each piece of equipment carefully positioned for instant access. Ambassador, sometimes the best diplomacy happens outside the negotiating room. But you're a xenobiologist, not a soldier, protested Colonel Martinez, Earth's military attaché. This is suicide. Actually, Sarah replied, pulling her dark hair back into a tight ponytail. My background makes me uniquely qualified for this particular challenge. Through the chamber's transparent aluminum walls, they could see the Vraxian preparation area. General Krexvar dominated the space, his massive frame towering over his attendants. Standing nearly 3 meters tall and weighing close to 400 kilograms, the Vraxian warrior was a nightmare of evolved killing efficiency. His exoskeleton gleamed like polished obsidian, while razor-sharp spines protruded from his joints and shoulders. For powerful arms ended in claws capable of rending steel, and his mandibles dripped with paralytic venom. Look at him, whispered Dr. Nakamura, Sarah's research partner. He's a living weapon. Sarah nodded thoughtfully. Yes, he certainly looks impressive. But appearances can be deceiving. The arena floor began to shift and change as ancient mechanisms activated for the first time in centuries. Massive walls rose from the ground, creating a labyrinthine environment of corridors, chambers, and vertical obstacles. Steam vents opened along the floor, releasing clouds of vapor that would provide cover, but also obscure vision. High above in the Prime Speaker's observation box, the massive council leader gestured with several appendages. Citizens of the galaxy, witness this ancient trial. 2 champions will face judgment from the depths of our most secure containment. May their courage illuminate the truth of their people's causes. The viewing platforms erupted in cheers, roars, and various alien expressions of excitement. Holographic displays throughout the arena provided multiple viewing angles for the billions of beings watching across the galaxy. A deep rumble shook the arena floor as something massive stirred in the depths below. Warning lights flashed as automated systems checked atmospheric conditions and structural integrity. The trial beast was awakening. Sarah closed her eyes and took 3 slow, measured breaths. Her heart rate remained steady, her hands calm and sure. When she opened her eyes again, They held the focused intensity of a predator preparing to hunt. "Time to go," announced the council arbiter, a floating jellyfish-like being whose tentacles crackled with bioelectric energy. "Champions, into your starting positions." The arena doors irised open with a pneumatic hiss. General Krexvar strode onto the arena floor with the confidence of a being who had never known defeat. His movements were fluid and precise, each step calculated to demonstrate his lethal grace. The crowd roared its approval as he raised all four arms in salute. Sarah emerged from the opposite entrance, and the arena fell silent. Compared to the Vraxian's imposing presence, she appeared almost fragile. Yet something in her purposeful stride gave pause to those watching. She didn't move like a scientist thrust into combat. She moved like someone who belonged here. The arena floor shuddered again as heavy blast doors began retracting deep beneath the surface. A fetid smell drifted upward, carrying the scent of ancient death and primal hunger. Red warning lights bathed the arena in an ominous glow as atmospheric sensors detected dangerous pheromone levels. "Champions," the arbiter's voice echoed throughout the arena. "Prepare yourselves. The judgment approaches." A roar unlike anything heard in centuries erupted from the depths. The sound was so deep and powerful that it vibrated through the arena's superstructure, causing some of the smaller alien spectators to clutch their seats in terror. Even General Krexvar paused, his compound eyes turning toward the source of that primordial sound. Sarah smiled. The blast doors finished retracting with a final, echoing clang. For a moment, only darkness was visible in the massive opening. Then two eyes like burning coals appeared in the depths, followed by another pair, and another. The trial beast wasn't one creature. It was something far worse. The first head emerged from the darkness, easily the size of a small shuttlecraft. Scales like obsidian mirrors caught and reflected the arena lights as a serpentine neck stretched upward. A second head followed, then a third. The trial beast was a hydra-like entity, each head capable of independent thought and action. General Krexvar's confidence faltered as the creature's full form became visible. The beast stood nearly 6 meters tall at the shoulder, its three massive heads weaving hypnotically as it surveyed the arena. Each mouth revealed rows of teeth like crystalline daggers, while acidic saliva dripped from its jaws and sizzled against the arena floor. The crowd's excitement transformed into hushed awe. This was the legendary trial beast, unchanged since the Council's earliest days. No warrior had ever truly defeated it. Survival was the only victory possible. The creature's 6 eyes fixed on the two champions, evaluating them with an intelligence that seemed almost human in its calculating coldness. Its massive form tensed as it prepared to strike. Sarah reached for something on her utility belt, her movements calm and deliberate despite the cosmic-level predator bearing down on her. General Krexvar raised his 4 arms defensively, venom already beginning to coat his mandibles. The trial beast chose its first target and lunged. The trial beast's 3 heads moved with terrifying coordination as it selected General Krexvar as its primary target. The Vraxian warrior was larger, more obviously threatening, and radiated the aggressive pheromones of a natural predator. To the ancient creature's predatory instincts, he represented the greater immediate danger. Krexvar's combat training took over as the leftmost head struck like a battering ram. His 4 arms moved in perfect harmony, 2 catching the massive head just behind the jaw while the other 2 drove his razor-sharp claws toward the creature's eyes. The impact sent him sliding backward across the arena floor, his feet carving deep gouges in the metal plating. The beast's middle head darted forward while Krexvar was engaged, attempting to bite down on his torso. The Vraxian warrior twisted with inhuman flexibility, allowing the massive fangs to scrape harmlessly across his exoskeleton. Acidic saliva hissed and steamed where it touched his natural armor, but failed to penetrate. Meanwhile, Sarah moved with purpose but not panic. While the beast focused on the more obvious threat, She sprinted toward one of the arena's manufactured obstacles, a towering spire of twisted metal that rose nearly 20 meters into the air. Her movements were fluid and efficient, covering ground with the easy stride of someone accustomed to field work in hostile environments. The third head noticed her movement and swiveled her direction, but the other two heads were fully engaged with Krexvar's desperate defense. The creature's ancient intelligence recognized this as a tactical disadvantage. Divided attention in combat was often fatal, but its hunting instincts demanded it pursue the fleeing prey. Krexvar roared his own battle cry as he managed to rake his claws across the middle head snout, drawing dark ichor that steamed in the arena's atmosphere. The wound only seemed to enrage the beast further. All three heads pulled back momentarily, then struck in unison. The Vraxian warrior's speed was remarkable for something his size, but he couldn't dodge three coordinated attacks simultaneously. The rightmost head caught his lower left arm in its jaws, the crystalline teeth punching through his exoskeleton like it was paper. Krexvar's scream of pain and rage echoed through the arena as acidic saliva began eating through his internal tissues. The crowd gasped in horror and excitement. Blood sports were officially banned throughout the galaxy, but the trial by combat was considered a sacred exception, a relic of older, more primitive times when disputes were settled through strength rather than negotiation. Sarah reached the base of the metal spire and began climbing with practiced efficiency. Her xenobiology training had included extensive fieldwork on dozens of hostile worlds, often requiring her to navigate dangerous terrain while studying predatory species. The climbing techniques she'd learned in the canopies of Proxima Centauri's killer forests served her well now. The beast's third head tracked her ascent, its serpentine neck extending as it prepared to pluck her from her perch like fruit from a tree. But Sarah had positioned herself carefully. The head would have to stretch to its maximum length to reach her, leaving it vulnerable and off balance. As a massive head struck, Sarah did something that stunned every observer in the arena. Instead of dodging or trying to climb higher, she leaped directly toward the beast's open mouth. Her timing was perfect, her trajectory calculated with scientific precision. She sailed past the creature's fangs and landed on its massive snout, just behind the nostrils. The beast jerked its head back in surprise and confusion. Prey didn't typically attack, they fled. This small creature's behavior fell outside its understanding of normal predator-prey dynamics. Sarah drove her hands into specific pressure points along the creature's snout, her fingers finding nerve clusters with the precision of someone who had studied the anatomy of hundreds of alien species. The beast's third head shook violently, trying to dislodge her, but she held on with the determined grip of someone fighting for her species' survival. Below, General Krexvar was fighting for his life. The beast's other two heads pressed their advantage, one maintaining its grip on his wounded arm while the other struck repeatedly at his torso and head. His exoskeleton was beginning to crack under the relentless assault, and his movements were becoming sluggish as venom and acid ate away at his strength. The Vraxian warrior was dying, and he knew it, but he was also buying time for the human, though he couldn't understand why. In Vraxian culture, individual glory was everything. The idea of self-sacrifice for another's benefit was almost incomprehensible. Sarah pressed her advantage as the third head continued trying to shake her loose. Her studies of the Trial Beast's historical encounters had revealed crucial information that previous champions had lacked. The creature wasn't just a mindless predator. It was an ancient bioweapon, engineered by a long-dead civilization for a purpose that had been lost to time. More importantly, she had identified its weaknesses. The pressure points she was manipulating weren't just causing pain. They were disrupting the neural pathways that coordinated the creature's multiple heads. Already, she could see the beast's attacks becoming less synchronized. The heads were beginning to interfere with each other's movements. But her real advantage wasn't knowledge. It was something the other species had never truly understood about humanity. Where they saw weakness in her small stature and apparent fragility, Sarah knew the truth that had allowed her species to dominate their home planet despite being neither the strongest nor the fastest predators in Earth's ecosystem. Humans were persistence hunters. They didn't need to be the biggest or strongest. They just needed to outlast everything else. The beast's third head slammed itself against the metal spire, trying to crush her against the unyielding surface. Sarah absorbed the impact with her knees and continued working, her fingers dancing across neural pressure points with increasing confidence. In the viewing stands, the alien observers watched in growing amazement as this small human seemed to be actually winning her confrontation with the legendary trial beast. Even the prime speaker leaned forward, its massive bulk shifting as it focused on the unprecedented display below. General Krexvar's strength was failing. His wounded arm hung useless at his side, and dark ichor flowed freely from multiple wounds. But his warrior's pride wouldn't let him yield. If he was going to die, he would die fighting. The beast sensed its prey's weakness and pressed forward for the killing blow. All three heads drew back simultaneously, preparing to strike in perfect unison and end the Vraxian's resistance once and for all. That was when Sarah made her move. Sarah's fingers found the exact nerve cluster she had been searching for, hidden beneath the armored scales just behind the beast's third head's jaw. Her xenobiology studies had revealed this weakness in ancient texts describing the creature's original design, a failsafe built into its neural architecture by its long-dead creators. As the three heads drew back to deliver their coordinated killing blow against General Krexvar, Sarah pressed down with all her strength on the critical nerve junction. The effect was immediate and catastrophic for the beast's coordination systems. The creature's ancient bioengineering betrayed it in that crucial moment. The neural disruption cascade Sarah had triggered didn't just affect the head she was clinging to. It sent feedback pulses throughout the beast's shared nervous system. All three heads suddenly lost synchronization, their carefully coordinated attack dissolving into chaos. The leftmost head struck too early, missing Krexvar entirely, and slamming into the arena floor with enough force to crack the reinforced plating. The middle head's trajectory was thrown off by the sudden neural interference, its fangs scraping harmlessly past the wounded Vraxian warrior. The rightmost head, the one Sarah rode, jerked violently as competing neural signals caused its muscles to seize. General Krexvar, despite his wounds and exhaustion, recognized the opportunity immediately. Vraxian warriors were trained to exploit any advantage, no matter how brief. With his remaining 3 functional arms, he drove his claws deep into the middle head's throat, piercing through scales and muscle to reach the major blood vessels beneath. The beast roared in pain and fury, a sound that shook the entire arena structure. Dark ichor fountained from the wound as the massive creature thrashed in agony. But instead of the coordinated threat it had been moments before, it was now a wounded animal acting on pure instinct. Sarah held on desperately as her head bucked and twisted, trying to dislodge her. The neural pressure point she was manipulating required constant contact to maintain the disruption effect. If she lost her grip now, the beast would quickly regain its coordination and the battle would be lost. Through the chaos, she could see General Krexvar pressing his advantage. The Vraxian warrior might have been dying, but he was using his remaining strength efficiently. His claws worked like surgical instruments, opening arteries and severing tendons with the precision of someone who had studied anatomy through combat experience. The middle head's movements became increasingly sluggish as blood loss took its toll. But the other 2 heads were still dangerous, and Sarah could feel her own strength beginning to fade. Maintaining pressure on the nerve cluster while riding a bucking, 3-headed bioweapon was proving to be one of the most physically demanding challenges of her life. In the viewing stands, the alien observers watched in stunned silence. This was not how trial beast encounters were supposed to unfold. Typically, champions either died quickly or survived through evasion and endurance until the creature grew bored and retreated. No one had ever actively fought back with such effectiveness. Ambassador Zekthal's compound eyes were wide with disbelief. His perfect champion was covered in his own blood, fighting desperately for his life. Meanwhile, the human scientist he had dismissed as a weakling was somehow controlling one of the beast's heads through nothing more than applied pressure and scientific knowledge. Impossible, he chittered to his aides. She's just a scientist. This cannot be happening. But it was happening, and Sarah was just getting started. Her initial plan had been to disrupt the beast's coordination long enough for both champions to retreat to opposite ends of the arena, effectively ending the trial in a draw. However, seeing Krexvar's commitment to the fight had sparked something deeper in her human psychology. Humans didn't just persist, they adapted. And, right now, Sarah was adapting her tactics in real time based on the changing battlefield conditions. She released her grip on the nerve cluster briefly, allowing the beast's coordination to begin returning, then immediately shifted her position to a different pressure point. This one was designed not to disrupt neural signals, but to trigger an involuntary muscle response. The beast's third head suddenly snapped downward toward its own body, the massive jaws opening wide. For a terrifying moment, Sarah thought she had miscalculated and triggered some kind of self-destruct mechanism. Then, she realized what was actually happening. The head was trying to bite its own middle neck. The one Krexvar was systematically dismantling. The beast's own confusion and pain were causing it to attack itself. Krexvar saw the massive jaws descending toward him and made a split-second decision that would have seemed impossible for someone of his species. Instead of dodging away, he wrapped his remaining good arms around the middle head's neck and held on. When the third head's fangs struck, they would have to go through him to reach their target. The crystalline teeth punched through Krexvar's exoskeleton and deep into his torso, but they also sank into the middle head's neck. The beast's own venom began working on its internal tissues, while its acidic saliva ate away at its own flesh from the inside. General Krexvar laughed, a sound like breaking crystal mixed with grinding metal. For the Empire, he gasped, then drove his remaining functional claw deep into the third head's eye. The explosion of pain and neural feedback finally overwhelmed the beast's ancient nervous system. All three heads reared back simultaneously, screaming in harmonized agony. Sarah lost her grip and was flung through the air, landing hard against one of the arena's manufactured barriers. For a moment, she lay stunned, her vision blurry, and her body screaming with pain. Through the haze, she could see the beast writhing in the center of the arena, its movements becoming increasingly erratic. General Krexvar lay motionless where he had fallen, his massive form broken, but somehow still radiating dignity even in defeat. The creature's death throes were magnificent and terrifying. Ancient bioengineering was shutting down system by system as cascading neural failures spread throughout its massive form. The middle head hung limply, dark ichor pooling beneath it. The third head was blinded and confused, its damaged eye leaking fluid that sizzled against the arena floor. Only the leftmost head remained fully functional, and it turned towards Sarah with the focused intensity of a predator that had finally identified the true threat. Sarah struggled to her feet, her body protesting every movement. Her equipment belt had been damaged in the fall, several tools scattered across the arena floor. She had no weapons, no allies, and was facing down a creature that had killed champions for centuries. But she was still human, and humans had one advantage that no other species in the galaxy had ever truly understood. They refused to kill the beast's remaining functional head, fixed its gaze on Sarah with the cold intelligence of a predator that had finally recognized the architect of its pain. The creature's massive body was shutting down, systems failing one by one, but it had enough strength left for one final attack. Its serpentine neck coiled like a spring, preparing to launch forward with enough force to crush her against the arena wall. Sarah stood perfectly still, her dark eyes never leaving the creature's burning gaze. Her breathing was controlled, measured, despite the pain radiating through her battered body. To the thousands of alien observers watching from the viewing platforms, she appeared to be frozen in terror, waiting helplessly for death. They couldn't have been more wrong. As the beast's head shot forward like a guided missile, Sarah moved with the fluid precision of someone who had spent her entire career studying predatory behavior. She didn't dodge left or right. Instead, she dropped to one knee and reached up with both hands, catching the massive creature's upper and lower fangs as its jaws snapped shut around empty air where her head had been a fraction of a second earlier. The arena fell into absolute silence. Even the beast seemed stunned by what had just occurred. Sarah Chun, a human scientist weighing barely 55 kilograms, had caught the fangs of a legendary bioweapon mid-lunge and was now holding its jaws open through nothing more than leverage and determination. Her arms trembled with the strain, and she could feel the creature's incredible jaw muscles working against her grip. The fangs were easily as long as her forearms, their crystalline surfaces razor-sharp and dripping with venom that hissed and steamed where it touched her gloves. "You know what your problem is?" Sarah said, her voice carrying clearly through the silent arena despite the strain of holding back several tons of biting pressure. "You're exactly what your creators designed you to be. No adaptation, no creativity, just a very impressive killing machine." The beast's eye widened slightly, as if it understood her words. Its ancient intelligence was capable of comprehending language, even if it rarely chose to engage in communication. "Humans, on the other hand," Sarah continued, her grip shifting slightly as she found better leverage points on the massive fangs, "we're generalists. We adapt. We improvise. We turn problems into opportunities." With a sudden twist of her wrists, she used the beast's own forward momentum against it, redirecting the massive head's trajectory downward. The creature's jaw smashed into the arena floor with tremendous force, the impact driving its lower fangs deep into the reinforced metal plating. The beast tried to pull back, but its fangs were now firmly embedded in the arena's superstructure. Its struggles only drove them deeper, effectively pinning it in place. For the first time in its centuries of existence, the legendary trial beast was trapped by its own weapons. Sarah released her grip and stepped back, calmly brushing dust from her combat suit. The creature thrashed frantically, its massive body writhing as it tried to free itself from the metal that now held it captive. But the more it struggled, the more firmly trapped it became. "The thing about being an apex predator," Sarah said, loud enough for her voice to carry throughout the arena, "is that you never learn how to deal with failure. You've never had to adapt because you've never had to face something that could outthink you." She walked over to where General Krexvar lay motionless and knelt beside him. The Vraxian warrior was still breathing, though barely. His compound eyes tracked her movement as she approached. "That was magnificently done, General," she said softly. "Your species should be proud." Krexvar managed a weak smile, his mandibles clicking with what might have been amusement. You planned this," he rasped. "From the beginning. You knew how to defeat it." Sarah nodded. "I studied every recorded encounter with the trial beast over the past 3 centuries. Every champion who faced it made the same mistake. They tried to fight it like a warrior instead of understanding it like a scientist. And you let me think I was buying you time," Krexvar continued, his voice growing weaker. "While you were really buying time for yourself." "I was buying time for both of us," Sarah corrected. "You fought magnificently, General. Your courage made my plan possible." The Vraxian warrior's eyes began to close, but his mandibles curved in what his species considered a smile of respect. Perhaps humans are not as weak as we believed." Throughout the arena, the alien observers were beginning to react to what they had witnessed. The initial shock was giving way to amazement, then to something approaching awe. A human, a small, apparently fragile human scientist, had not only survived an encounter with a trial beast, but had actually defeated it using nothing more than knowledge and tactical thinking. In the Prime Speaker's observation box, the massive council leader was consulting with its advisors in urgent, whispered conversation. The ancient laws were clear about the trial by combat. Whichever champion survived longer proved their people's righteousness. But this situation was unprecedented. One champion was dying, but victorious, while the other had achieved something no being in galactic history had ever accomplished. Ambassador Zekthal was in heated argument with his own delegation, his four arms gesturing frantically as he tried to find some legal loophole that would invalidate what everyone had just witnessed. But the laws were ancient and absolute. There could be no disputing the results of a sanctified trial. Sarah stood and walked back toward the trapped beast, which had finally exhausted itself trying to escape. The creature's remaining head lay on the arena floor, its breathing labored, and its eye dim with approaching death. The other two heads were motionless, their systems finally shut down completely. She knelt beside the dying creature and placed her hand gently on its massive snout. "Thank you," she said quietly. "You taught our entire species something important today." The beast's eye focused on her one final time, and something that might have been understanding passed between predator and prey. Then, the ancient bioweapon's breathing stopped, and the legendary trial beast was finally at rest. The arena remained silent for a long moment, as if the entire galaxy was holding its breath. Then, the Prime Speaker's voice boomed across the chamber. "The trial is concluded. By ancient law and sacred tradition, the human champion has proven her people's righteousness. The charges against Earth are dismissed, and the Vraxian Empire's claims are found without merit." The viewing platforms erupted in sound as thousands of beings reacted simultaneously. Some cheered, others protested, and many simply stared in stunned disbelief at the small human woman standing alone in the center of the arena. Sarah looked up at the observation boxes, her expression calm and professional once again. "Council members," she called, her voice carrying clearly through the chaos. "Perhaps now we can discuss the Vraxian Empire's illegal slavery operations like civilized beings." The message was clear to every observer in the arena. Humanity had just announced itself as a force to be reckoned with in galactic politics. They were no longer the junior partners grateful for acceptance into the cosmic community. They were equals, and they had earned that equality through courage, intelligence, and an absolute refusal to surrender in the face of impossible odds. The age of human diplomacy had just begun. The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with tension as Ambassador Zekthal of the Vraxian Empire rose from his crystalline seat. His four arms gestured dramatically, while his compound eyes fixed on the human delegation seated across the vast circular arena. The ambient lighting cast eerie shadows across the faces of representatives from dozens of species, each more alien than the last. "Esteemed council members," Zekthal's voice resonated through the universal translators, carrying undertones of barely contained fury. "The humans have committed an unprecedented act of aggression against our mining colony on Kepler 442b. They destroyed our extraction facilities and liberated our workforce without provocation." Dr. Sarah Chun, Earth's chief xenobiologist and diplomatic liaison, remained perfectly still in her chair. Her dark eyes never left Zekthal's towering form as she processed his accusations. Around her, the other human representatives shifted uncomfortably, but Sarah's expression remained neutral, almost bored. The Vraxian continued his theatrical display, his voice rising with each word. "We demand immediate reparations and the surrender of the terrorist who led this unprovoked assault on sovereign Vraxian territory. The human known as Captain Marcus Webb must face justice before this council." A murmur rippled through the assembly. The Kthari delegates' tentacles writhed anxiously, while the silicon-based Nexari representatives' crystalline form pulsed with agitated light patterns. Even the normally stoic Andromedans shifted in their environmental suits. Sarah finally stood, her movement fluid and controlled. At barely 5.5 feet tall, she appeared dwarfed by the massive alien beings surrounding her, yet something in her posture commanded attention. The chamber gradually fell silent. Council members, she began, her voice carrying clearly without amplification. Ambassador Zekthol's account is selective in its details. Perhaps he forgot to mention that his workforce consisted of captured civilians from 3 different worlds, including children barely past their first molting. Zekthol's mandibles clicked angrily. Those were legal acquisitions under Vraxian law. Under whose authority? Sarah interrupted, taking a step forward. The Kepler system falls under no recognized territorial claims. Your colony was operating illegally, using slave labor to strip mine rare Earth elements for your war machine. The Vraxian ambassador's forearms spread wide in what his species considered a threatening display. You dare lecture us about law? Human? Your species has been spacefaring for barely 2 centuries. We have ruled the void for over 10,000 years. Sarah smiled, a cold expression that didn't reach her eyes. And yet here we are. The council chamber erupted in agitated chatter. The hegemony's prime speaker, a massive being whose species resembled a cross between a bear and an octopus, raised one of its 12 appendages for silence. When order returned, its deep voice boomed across the chamber. The charges are serious, human. The Vraxian Empire has been a council member for millennia. Your species joined us barely 50 years ago. If their claims prove accurate, Earth faces expulsion and economic sanctions. Sarah nodded respectfully. Prime Speaker, we understand the gravity of these accusations. We're prepared to demonstrate our version of events, but we request the right to trial by combat, as outlined in Section 12 of the Galactic Accords. A shocked silence fell over the chamber. Trial by combat was an ancient right, rarely invoked, and considered barbarically outdated by most civilized species. The human delegation behind Sarah exchanged worried glances. Zekthol's compound eyes gleamed with predatory satisfaction. The human seeks to die gloriously rather than face the shame of surrender. Very well. I accept this trial by combat on behalf of the Vraxian Empire. Actually, Sarah said, her voice carrying a hint of amusement, the trial isn't between representatives. According to the Accords, each side must select a champion to face the Council's trial beast in the arena of judgment. Whichever champion survives longer proves their people's righteousness. The Prime Speaker's massive form shifted, appendages writhing with what might have been excitement or concern. The trial beast has not been awakened in over 3 centuries. Human. Are you certain of this path? Sarah's smile widened slightly. Absolutely certain, Prime Speaker. Zekthol's confidence wavered slightly. The trial beast was legendary among spacefaring species, a creature so dangerous that it had killed dozens of warriors from various worlds. Only the bravest or most foolish would willingly face it. I named General Krexvar as the Vraxian champion, Zekthol announced. The greatest warrior our species has ever produced. And I will serve as Earth's champion, Sarah replied calmly. The chamber exploded in shocked exclamations. The other human delegates looked horrified, while alien representatives chittered and buzzed in their various languages. Sarah Chun was known throughout the galaxy as a brilliant scientist and diplomat, not a warrior. Zekthol laughed, the sound like breaking glass. A scientist against the destroyer of worlds? This trial will last mere moments. Sarah's expression never changed. We shall see, Ambassador. We shall see.